A sergeant dropped a federal agent's badge into a trash can beside his desk. 90 seconds later, every bolt in the building slammed home. The loading gate dropped, and no piece of evidence could leave the annex ever again. What that sergeant didn't know was that the badge he threw away had already started a lockdown. He couldn't stop. Stay with me to the end and subscribe if you want more stories like this. Here's how it happened. At 7:42 on a wet Tuesday morning, Special Agent Camille Reddick parked across from the Black Ridge County Police Evidence Annex and watched rain slide down the windshield. The annex sat behind a low concrete wall outside Columbus, with reinforced windows, 2 loading bays, and a steel vehicle gate facing the service road. For 3 weeks, the FBI's Public Corruption Squad had watched sealed boxes enter without being scanned and leave through doors that official logs said had never opened. Assistant U.S. Attorney Miriam Langley and a federal entry team waited less than 2 blocks away inside delivery vans. Miriam had wanted another agent to accompany Camille, but Camille insisted that a larger presence might cause the staff to move the evidence before the warrant team reached the loading bay. She also carried an older reason for working alone. 7 years earlier, she had delayed calling backup during a bribery operation, and a young deputy had been shot through the hand. Since then, Camille had tried to place herself between danger and everyone younger around her. She entered the annex wearing a charcoal blazer and carrying a sealed envelope. Sergeant Owen Barlow sat behind the reception counter with coffee near one hand and a destruction log near the other. Officer Tessa Marino worked at a nearby terminal, while civilian evidence clerk Rafael Dominguez scanned barcodes at the far end. "The public entrance is next door," Barlow said without looking up. Camille placed her credential case on the counter. "Special Agent Camille Reddick, FBI. I need access to locker E17. Call the published field office number and verify me." Barlow opened the case, studied the badge, then looked behind her. "You came alone." "I asked you to verify me." He gave a small laugh. "People buy these online. That's why the verification number exists." Tessa stopped typing. Raphael kept his eyes on the scanner, but his hand had gone still. Barlow closed the credential case and dropped it into a trash can beside the desk. It landed on damp coffee filters. "You can walk out," he said, "or I can have you removed." Camille did not reach into the trash. She slipped one hand inside her blazer and pressed the emergency control on her government phone 3 times. The signal told Miriam that annex personnel had obstructed access and that evidence might be in immediate danger. A gray box rolled past the lobby on a destruction cart. Camille saw the barcode, BR24771 ton. It belonged to 22-year-old Tyrell Boone, who had spent 19 days in county custody after 2 Black Ridge officers accused him of assaulting them outside his family's grocery store. Tyrell said his phone had recorded those officers demanding cash from his father. County records claimed the device was water damaged and awaiting disposal. "Stop that cart," Camille said. Barlow waved the technician forward. "You don't give orders here." 90 seconds after Camille sent the signal, steel bolts struck throughout the annex. The main doors sealed, the loading gate dropped, and every access panel turned red. A recorded voice announced that a federal evidence preservation order was in effect and no property could leave the building. Barlow swiped his card at the front door. The light stayed red. He grabbed the desk phone and ordered control to release the lobby, but the dispatcher told him building access had transferred under a federal warrant. Camille recovered her credentials and wiped coffee from the leather. "You should have made the call." The security monitors changed. Miriam appeared beside agents positioned outside the loading bay. She identified herself, read the warrant number, and ordered everyone inside to preserve all records, devices, and physical evidence. Employees could move to designated safety areas, but no one could leave with unchecked property. Barlow looked toward the corridor. The Boone phone was approved for disposal. It was damaged and had no evidentiary value. Camille opened the sealed envelope and removed a certified scan log. "It left locker E17 8 minutes ago. The destruction authorization was entered last night after your department received notice to preserve it." Tessa glanced at the clock. "The media crusher starts at 8. It was 7:57. "How long does the cycle take?" Camille asked. "About 3 minutes. Barlow told Tessa to stay out of it. Camille asked who had authorized the transfer, but he remained silent. Raphael finally looked up and named Lieutenant Marla Keene. Keene had supervised the annex for 11 years and received 3 commendations for maintaining evidence integrity. Her name also appeared repeatedly in the information that had brought the FBI to Black Ridge. Miriam told Camille that the entry team needed another minute to defeat the reinforced loading bay lock. A heavy motor started beyond the security door. Camille turned to Tessa. "Open the service passage and come back. My badge opens the destruction room too. You're not going in there." Tessa stood. "Lieutenant Keene told me I'd lose my job if I questioned a destruction order. I saw 3 phones move without scans and did nothing. You don't get to decide I'm too fragile to help fix it." Camille felt the familiar urge to keep Tessa behind the counter and carry the danger herself. The memory of the wounded deputy made that urge feel responsible, but Tessa was asking to make her own decision. "Stay behind me," Camille said. "Follow my instructions." Raphael stepped away from his terminal and said there was a maintenance route through chemical storage. When Barlow ordered him to sit down, Raphael looked at the destruction log. "I've been doing that for too long." The maintenance corridor smelled of bleach and overheated wiring. Tessa opened 2 old card barriers while the crusher's motor grew louder. At the destruction room, Raphael pulled the emergency cutoff. The machine's rollers slowed, stopping inches above the gray box. Camille photographed the seal before opening it. Inside were a cracked phone case, a dead battery, and metal washers taped beneath the cardboard insert. The phone was gone. A woman's voice came from the doorway. "Agent Reddick, you have shut down a county facility over an item that was lawfully destroyed." Lieutenant Marla Keene stood in the hall in a pressed Navy uniform, her silver-streaked hair pinned neatly behind her head, a printed memorandum in her hand. "I received an alert that credentials matching yours had been compromised. Sergeant Barlow, follow security procedure." The memo claimed Camille's badge number had been reported stolen at 6:40 that morning. Camille had been in Miriam's office at that time, receiving the warrant. Miriam checked the alert system and confirmed through Camille's earpiece that the report was forged. Keene folded her arms. "Until her identity is resolved, Sergeant Barlow should detain her." Barlow looked at the federal order banner glowing on the monitor. "Lieutenant, they have the building." "That doesn't change your chain of command?" "Tease." Miriam appeared on screen and read the warrant number, the judge's name, Camille's badge number, and the phone number Barlow had refused to call. An agent entering through the loading bay confirmed every detail. Tessa raised her phone. "I saw you with the box at 7:31. Keene turned toward her. "Think carefully." The photograph showed Keene pushing the gray box toward the destruction wing. An oversized black radio pouch hung from her belt, large enough, Camille noted, to hold a smartphone. Camille almost moved Tessa behind the federal team. Instead, she asked whether Tessa was willing to give a sworn statement. Tessa's hand shook, but she said yes. Keene turned to Barlow. "You signed the destruction authorization. You supervised this shift." "You brought me the form," Barlow said. "I signed dozens." "Your signature is your responsibility." Barlow's face changed. Keene had made clear that she expected him to carry the case if investigators found enough evidence. Camille examined the box. Someone had prepared the substitution before the cart reached the crusher. "Where's the phone?" Keene glanced at the agents entering the room. "You came here expecting a conspiracy. Now an empty box proves whatever you want." Raphael appeared behind the search team with a ring of keys and an external drive. He told them there was another storage cage that did not appear on the building plan and led them to the oldest section of the annex, where rolling archive shelves covered a gray wall panel. A floor latch released the shelves, exposing a mechanical lock. Barlow removed a key from beneath the cover of his duty notebook. Camille asked how often he had opened the hidden cage. 3 times, maybe 4. Keene told him to stop answering without an attorney. He did not look at her. Inside were bins filled with phones, memory cards, body camera drives, dash camera storage units, and complaint files. Many carried red labels showing they had officially been destroyed. Some property numbers belonged to cases that ended in guilty pleas. Others matched civil complaints dismissed for lack of evidence. Miriam assigned agents to photograph every container before touching it. Raphael handed her the external drive. For nearly 2 years, he had copied scan logs whenever property disappeared from inventory. I kept waiting until I had enough to protect myself, he said. Mostly I was waiting to retire. His pension would vest in 11 months. Camille told him to provide every record and explain when he first noticed the pattern. She offered no promise that his delay would be ignored. A quick review identified 43 cases with unexplained transfers or false destruction entries. Tyrell's phone was not in the hidden cage. Tessa checked the scanner record. The phone had never passed through the loading dock or any exterior checkpoint. Camille enlarged Tessa's photograph and studied the radio pouch again. When Keene had appeared in the destruction corridor, the pouch was gone. Barlow noticed too. She changed belts before she came down here. The fire alarm sounded. Sprinklers opened in 2 corridors, and employees moved towards supervised safety zones. Interior doors released for evacuation, while exterior vestibules remained controlled by federal agents. Keene shoved past the technician and ran toward the server corridor. Camille followed and told Tessa to remain with Miriam. My badge is required to open the server doors, Tessa answered. Camille hesitated, then motioned for her to stay close. Through the final door's narrow window, they saw Keene pull Tyrell's phone from an emergency medical cabinet. Beside her stood a hydraulic punch used to destroy damaged storage media. Barlow arrived behind them. Lieutenant, stop. Keene placed the phone beneath the punch. You signed every form, Owen. When these cases reopen, they'll take your badge and your pension. You said the evidence was cleared. You wanted the promotion. Barlow gripped the doorframe. I wasn't forced. He entered the override code. Keene pressed the punch control, but a federal technician had already cut power to the equipment. Camille entered with her weapon holstered. Step away from the phone. Keene kept one hand near the device. If those files leave this building, every officer in this county becomes a suspect. They'll be evaluated by what the evidence shows. Keene glanced toward Tessa. She stayed quiet. She looked at Dominguez. He stayed quiet. Barlow had already signed the paperwork. How many people do you plan to arrest? Keene asked. Miriam entered behind the arrest team. That depends on what each person did. Keene looked around the room. Barlow stared at the floor. Tessa held her position by the door. No one stepped forward for her. Keene moved away from the punch. Miriam read her rights while agents secured the room. Barlow removed his badge and placed it on a cart before anyone asked. Camille sealed Tyrell's phone in a fresh evidence bag and handed it to a technician who placed it inside a signal isolation pouch to block any remote wipe command. By noon, Tyrell's cloud backup was playing in a secure conference room. Miriam had obtained a preservation order for the account the previous week, so the case did not depend entirely on recovering the device, but the phone still carried metadata connecting the false destruction record to Keene's actions. The video began outside Boone Family Market. Tyrell stood near the side entrance while 2 Black Ridge officers spoke with his father, Leon. One demanded monthly cash in exchange for fewer code complaints and fewer late-night problems around the store. Leon said he had already paid twice and could not keep taking money from the register. Tyrell raised his phone. An officer knocked it from his hand, but the recording continued from the pavement. The audio captured the officers forcing Tyrell against a car, accusing him of swinging first and dictating a false report, while he shouted that the phone had recorded everything. Another audio file had activated while the device sat inside an evidence bag. Keene's voice could be heard instructing someone to make sure the Boone phone never reached discovery. Miriam paused the recording and began assigning work. Tyrell's attorney received the video. The county prosecutor was notified that the assault case rested on compromised reports. Investigators prepared additional warrants for the hidden cage, the officers in the recording, and the supervisors who had accessed altered logs. Barlow admitted signing 13 questionable destruction orders in exchange for preferred shifts overtime and a promised promotion. He claimed Keene told him the items were duplicates or had already been cleared. Camille asked why he had thrown her credentials away instead of verifying them. At first, Barlow said the badge looked suspicious. After several minutes, he stared at his hands. I thought it might be real. Camille waited. If it was real, then they were coming for us. He had delayed because he feared Camille was legitimate and hoped the destruction cart would reach the crusher before the federal team took control. Tessa spent 4 hours with investigators. She described the first time Keene ordered her to bypass a scanner and the threat that followed. Tessa's mother was undergoing cancer treatment and the county health plan covered medication the family could not afford. King knew it. Raphael surrendered every copied log and identified the supervisors who had entered the hidden cage. He also admitted that he had waited almost 2 years before reporting outside the department. His records mattered, but his silence had consequences. Camille remained with Tessa during the first hour of her interview. When Tessa asked to continue alone with the case agents, Camille left the room. She did not like it, but she respected the request. That evening, the county prosecutor filed an emergency motion to dismiss the assault charge against Tyrell. Rain crossed the jail parking lot when his parents arrived. Leon wore the same brown work jacket visible in the recover video. Tyrell's mother held an umbrella but forgot to open it. Tyrell emerged carrying a clear bag with his wallet, belt, and shoelaces. He looked thinner than the photograph in the case file. His mother reached him first and Leon followed, pressing his forehead against his son's. After several minutes, Tyrell noticed Camille. "Did you find my phone?" "Yes." "So they know I was telling the truth." "They know." Tyrell looked back at the jail. "Some of them knew before." "Yes," Camille said. Leon asked why it had taken the FBI to make the county listen. Camille told him the investigation was still moving and that each person would be judged by what he or she had done. She did not promise that dismissal would repair everything. The store had lost customers. Tyrell had missed classes and Leon had borrowed against the building to pay legal fees. The criminal case was over, but the 19 days were gone. Before Camille left, Miriam handed her a photograph showing the credential case in Barlow's trash can. The forged alert, the weighted box, the scan logs, and the badge would all be preserved for prosecution. Camille knew the image would attract attention, though Tyrell's imprisonment and the hidden evidence mattered far more than the insult to her. 2 days later, Camille visited Boone Family Market while federal technicians copied the original recording for the defense team. The front windows still carried pale rectangles where advertisers had removed their signs after Tyrell's arrest. Leon stood behind the register, sorting invoices, and Tyrell was replacing canned goods that had expired while the store remained closed. A woman from the neighborhood entered, placed $20 on the counter, and told Leon to keep the change. Another customer followed with flowers for Tyrell's mother. The gestures helped, though. They also reminded the family how quickly many of the same people had believed the police report. Tyrell asked Camille whether King would go to prison. Camille explained that charges, evidence, and a trial still stood between the arrest and any sentence. He listened, then asked what would happen to Tessa and Raphael. "They helped you late," Camille said. "That matters in both directions." Tyrell considered the answer while placing soup cans on a shelf. "I'm glad they finally talked. I'm still angry that they waited." "You're allowed to be." Camille had spent years sorting people into those she could protect and those she needed to stop. Black Ridge offered no such clean division. Tessa had been afraid, Raphael had been cautious, and Barlow had been ambitious. Each had made choices that helped King's system survive. Their later cooperation mattered, but it belonged beside the damage rather than in place of it. The investigation widened over the next 4 months. Analysts reviewed every case linked to the hidden cage. Some recovered evidence did not change the outcome. Other files contradicted police reports or supported complaints of excessive force. 7 convictions were eventually vacated and additional reviews continued. The officers in Tyrell's video were charged with extortion, conspiracy, falsifying reports, and civil rights violations. Barlow resigned, surrendered his state certification, and pleaded guilty to obstruction and falsifying evidence records. His cooperation reduced his possible sentence but did not eliminate it. Tessa received formal discipline for failing to report the earlier irregularities. Raphael testified before a grand jury, and the public report recorded how long he had kept the copied logs without turning them over. King refused to cooperate. At her detention hearing, families connected to old Black Ridge cases filled 2 rows of the federal courtroom. Miriam presented the preservation notice, the late destruction order, the false credential alert, the washers, the hidden phone, and the secret cage. She used a photograph of Camille's badge to show that Barlow had rejected a direct verification process while evidence moved toward destruction. The judge denied King's release pending trial, citing the coordinated effort to conceal property and pressure subordinates. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked whether the entire department was corrupt. Camille said every employee and every reopened case had to be evaluated on evidence. Near the steps, Tyrell stood with his parents as Barlow was led toward a separate exit after entering his plea. Barlow saw him and lowered his eyes. Tyrell remained beside his family until he passed. The county placed the annex under independent supervision. Destruction now required approval from 2 reporting chains. Changes to scan logs triggered alerts outside the department, and video from destruction rooms was stored on servers local supervisors could not access. After completing her discipline and training, Tessa joined the temporary audit team. Raphael retired after his testimony. During his final interview, he told Camille that keeping secret copies had allowed him to feel responsible while avoiding the risk of speaking. "It made me feel better," he said. "That was part of the problem." Tyrell returned to community college, and Boone Family Market reopened after residents helped repair its reputation. He declined national interviews but spoke to a criminal justice class about knowing that proof existed, while the people controlling it decided whether anyone else would ever see it. 6 months after the raid, Camille entered another municipal building with 2 agents walking openly behind her. At reception, an officer requested identification. She handed over a replacement credential case. The officer compared the photograph, called the FBI using the published number, recorded the verification, and returned it. "Thank you, Agent Reddick. Someone will take you upstairs." Camille waited beside her team until the escort arrived. One of the younger agents reached for the document box she had carried from the car. Her first impulse was to keep it, but she handed it over and stepped into the elevator beside him. Her original credentials remained sealed with the Black Ridge exhibits, along with the weighted box, the forged alert, and Tyrell's phone. The officer at the new reception desk had needed less than a minute to follow the procedure Barlow had refused. Across town, investigators were still opening boxes from the hidden cage and returning long-suppressed evidence to the cases where it belonged. That's the whole story. If it held your attention, do me one favor, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments, should Tessa and Raphael have faced harsher consequences, or did their late cooperation earn them a second chance? See you in the next one.